The sound of breaking glass echoed through the grand ballroom of the Blackwell Hotel, as Sophia Ventura collapsed into a pool of white satin and lace. The guests at what should have been the happiest celebration in Bandera, Texas, stood frozen in horror, watching the bride's face turn ashen as she clutched her stomach in agony. It was June 1878, and what had begun as the wedding of the season in the small but prosperous cattle town had transformed into a scene of chaos and terror. Sophia's new husband, Walter Blackwell, son of the wealthiest rancher in Kerr County, stood paralyzed beside her, his mouth agape as his bride writhed in pain on the wooden floor. "Someone get the doctor," a woman screamed, breaking the stunned silence. From the back of the room, a tall figure pushed through the crowd. Unlike the finely dressed wedding guests, this man wore dusty riding clothes and a weathered cowboy hat. His presence at such an elaborate affair was unusual, but Nicholas Irving hadn't come for the celebration. He'd arrived in town only hours earlier, planning to speak with Walter Blackwell about cattle business. Nicholas knelt beside Sophia, his experienced eyes taking in her symptoms. Her lips had a bluish tint, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the coolness of the spring evening. "Stand back," Nicholas commanded, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to crisis. "She needs air." As the town doctor hurried over, Nicholas loosened the tight collar of Sophia's wedding dress. "When did she drink last?" he asked Walter, who seemed unable to form words. "The toast," someone else answered. "Just minutes ago." Nicholas spotted the champagne flute lying on its side, a few drops of liquid still clinging to the rim. Without hesitation, he dipped his finger in the residue and touched it to his tongue, then immediately spat it out. "Poison," he declared grimly. "Someone's poisoned the bride." The next few moments passed in a blur as the doctor arrived and Sophia was carefully carried upstairs to a hotel room. The celebration dissolved into fearful whispers and accusations as the sheriff was summoned to begin an investigation. Nicholas found himself following the small procession carrying Sophia upstairs, drawn by both concern and curiosity. He'd seen poisonings before during his time ranging across the frontier, usually accidents with bad water or tainted food, occasionally something more sinister. "I need someone to ride to my office for my supplies," the doctor, an elderly man named Ferguson, instructed once they had laid Sophia on the bed. "I'll go," Nicholas volunteered, partly to escape the suffocating tension in the room, but also because he sensed that time was critical. The bride's breathing had become increasingly labored. As he hurried down the stairs, Sheriff Miller intercepted him. "Hold up there, stranger. Nobody's leaving until I figure out what happened here." Nicholas sized up the lawman, middle-aged, competent-looking, with a carefully trimmed mustache and tired eyes. "Doctor needs his supplies. The lady upstairs is fighting for her life." The sheriff narrowed his eyes. "And you are Nicholas Irving, cattle broker from San Antonio. Just rode in today." "Convenient timing," the sheriff remarked, suspicion evident in his tone. "Think what you want, but that woman needs medicine now. Dr. Ferguson sent me for his supplies." After a tense moment, the sheriff nodded. "Jenkins," he called to a deputy, "escort Mr. Irving to the doctor's office and back. Don't let him out of your sight." 20 minutes later, Nicholas returned with the doctor's medical bag. Upstairs, the scene had deteriorated. Sophia lay ghostly pale against the white pillows, her body occasionally seizing with violent tremors. Her new husband stood useless in the corner, a handkerchief pressed to his mouth, while the doctor attempted to get her to swallow some activated charcoal. "She's not keeping anything down, doctor," Ferguson muttered, his expression grave. Whatever poison was used, it's working quickly. What can I do? Nicholas asked, surprising himself with his investment in this stranger's fate. The doctor looked up, seeming to notice Nicholas properly for the first time. You have experience with poisonings. Some. Spent 2 years with the Comanche, they know their poisons and their remedies. Dr. Ferguson hesitated, then nodded. I'm open to suggestions. Traditional medicine isn't helping her. Nicholas removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair, and stepped closer to examine Sophia. Despite her condition, he couldn't help noticing how beautiful she was. Delicate features, dark hair spread across the pillow like a fan. Her wedding dress had been loosened, but still sparkled with tiny pearls around the neckline. What are her symptoms besides the vomiting? Rapid heartbeat, constricted pupils, excessive sweating, and now these seizures, the doctor listed. Nicholas frowned, thinking back to his time on the frontier. Might be nightshade or something similar. Do you have any tincture of belladonna? The doctor's eyebrows shot up. That's a poison itself. In the right dose, it can counteract certain toxins. The Comanche taught me that sometimes you fight poison with poison. Dr. Ferguson hesitated, then opened his bag. I have a small amount, but I've never used it this way. Mix a few drops in water, very diluted, Nicholas instructed. If I'm wrong, it won't help, but it won't make her worse either. If I'm right, it might buy her time. Walter Blackwell suddenly found his voice. You can't let this stranger experiment on my wife. He could be the one who poisoned her. Sheriff Miller, who had followed Nicholas back upstairs, put a restraining hand on Walter's arm. Easy now, doctor. Ferguson looked from the bride's suffering form to Nicholas's steady gaze. We're losing her anyway. I'm willing to try. As the doctor prepared the tincture, Nicholas turned to the sheriff. This wasn't an accident. Someone deliberately targeted the bride. I know that much, the sheriff replied, his voice low. Question is, who and why? The champagne, was it poured from the same bottle as everyone else's? The sheriff shook his head. Special bottle for the bride and groom, I'm told, but only her glass was poisoned. Nicholas glanced at Walter Blackwell, who was now sobbing quietly in the corner. Interesting. The doctor returned with a small cup containing the diluted tincture. Together, he and Nicholas managed to get Sophia to swallow a few sips. The room fell silent as they watched for any change in her condition. After several tense minutes, her breathing seemed to ease slightly, and the violent tremors subsided to occasional twitches. It's working, Dr. Ferguson whispered, amazement in his voice. She's stabilizing. Relief flooded Nicholas's face, though he knew they weren't out of danger. She'll need constant care. The poison's still in her system, but we've bought her time. The sheriff cleared his throat. Mr. Blackwell, I need to ask you and the other guests some questions downstairs. Doctor. Ferguson, you'll stay with the patient. The elderly doctor looked exhausted. I should, but I have other patients in town who need attention. With this many people gathered for the wedding, there are bound to be others requiring medical care. Nicholas made a quick decision. I'll stay with her. I know what to watch for. All eyes turned to him in surprise. You're a stranger here, Walter objected. Why would you volunteer? Nicholas met the man's gaze directly. Because I'm the one who recognized the poison and I know how to counteract it if she worsens again. Sheriff Miller studied Nicholas carefully. Convenient that you have such knowledge. If I wanted her dead, Sheriff, I wouldn't have saved her life just now, Nicholas pointed out. Besides, you can post a deputy at the door if you're concerned. After some debate, it was agreed. Nicholas would stay with Sophia while the sheriff investigated among the wedding guests. Dr. Ferguson would return in a few hours after tending to his other patients. As the others filed out, Nicholas pulled a chair close to the bed and settled in for a long night. He studied Sophia's face, wondering what kind of woman she was and who would want her dead on her wedding day. The night passed slowly. Nicholas bathed Sophia's forehead with cool cloths when fever spiked and administered more of the diluted tincture twice when her breathing grew troubled. By dawn, her color had improved slightly, though she remained unconscious. Dr. Ferguson returned shortly after sunrise, amazed to find his patient still alive. "Whatever you did worked," he admitted, checking Sophia's pulse. "She's stronger than she was last night." "She's fighting," Nicholas agreed, "but she's not safe yet." The doctor nodded. "I've been thinking about what you said about the poison. If it is a nightshade derivative, she'll need intensive care for several days at least." "The hotel isn't the place for that," Nicholas said. "Agreed. But moving her in this condition is risky." Nicholas rubbed his tired eyes. "What about her family? Surely they'd want to help care for her." A shadow crossed the doctor's face. "Miss Ventura, Mrs. Blackwell now, I suppose, is an orphan. She came to Bandera 2 years ago to teach at our school. No family to speak of. And her husband, the Blackwells own the largest ranch in the county. They have the resources to care for her, certainly, but—" The doctor hesitated. "But what? It just seems strange that Walter hasn't been back to check on her since last night." "The sheriff released most of the guests hours ago." Nicholas frowned. Something wasn't adding up. "Where is the Blackwell Ranch?" "About 8 miles north of town. Beautiful property." Before they could discuss further, a commotion in the hallway drew their attention. The door burst open and Sheriff Miller entered, his expression grim. "We have a problem," he announced. "Walter Blackwell is missing, and so is the maid of honor." Nicholas straightened. "Missing?" "Rode out together sometime after midnight, according to the stable boy. Took horses and supplies." The doctor gasped. "But that would mean that the groom might have been involved in poisoning his own bride," Nicholas finished, the pieces suddenly falling into place. "Perhaps the dose was meant to kill, not just incapacitate." "Seems that way," the sheriff agreed. The maid of honor, Rebecca Wilkins, was apparently carrying on with Walter before he courted Sophia. Several guests mentioned there was bad blood there. Nicholas looked at Sophia's still form on the bed. "So what happens to her now?" Sheriff Miller sighed heavily. "That's the other problem. Walter's father, Jeremiah Blackwell, wants nothing to do with her. Says the marriage wasn't consummated, so she's not really a Blackwell." "That's cold," Nicholas muttered. "Cold but legal," the sheriff replied. "And with her being an outsider with no family." Dr. Ferguson cleared his throat. "She can't stay here. The hotel needs the room with all these wedding guests still in town." "I have a suggestion," Nicholas said slowly, "an idea forming. My family owns a small ranch about 5 miles east of town. It's quiet, clean, and my sister is skilled at nursing. She could stay there while she recovers." The sheriff raised an eyebrow. "Mighty generous offer from a stranger." Nicholas shrugged. "Someone tried to murder this woman on what should have been the happiest day of her life. Then her husband abandoned her. Seems like she could use some genuine help." After some discussion, it was agreed. Sophia would be moved to the Irving Ranch once Dr. Ferguson deemed her stable enough for transport. Meanwhile, Sheriff Miller would organize a search party for Walter Blackwell and Rebecca Wilkins. It was late afternoon before they finally transferred Sophia to a wagon padded with blankets. Nicholas drove carefully, mindful of every bump and rut in the road that might cause his passenger discomfort. Dr. Ferguson rode alongside, monitoring his patient. The Irving Ranch was modest compared to the sprawling Blackwell property, but the whitewashed farmhouse with its wide porch and climbing roses spoke of care and pride. As they approached, a woman with the same brown hair as Nicholas emerged, wiping her hands on an apron. "Nicky, we weren't expecting you back, so," she stopped short, seeing the wagon's occupant. "What's happened?" "Sarah, this is Dr. Ferguson," Nicholas introduced as he halted the wagon. "And this is Sophia Blackwell. She needs our help." Sarah Irving's questions were put aside as she immediately shifted to caring for their unexpected guest. With efficient movements, she directed Nicholas to carry Sophia to the spare bedroom and sent the ranch hand to fetch fresh water and linens. Once Sophia was settled, Dr. Ferguson explained the situation while Nicholas hovered in the doorway. "Poisoned at her own wedding," Sarah whispered, horrified. "And her husband the likely culprit. It's monstrous." "She'll need constant care for several days," the doctor explained. "The poison needs time to work through her system." Sarah straightened her shoulders. "She'll have it. Our mother was a healer before she passed. I know how to tend the sick." "I'll check back tomorrow," Dr. Ferguson promised, preparing to leave. "If her condition changes before then, send for me immediately." After seeing the doctor off, Nicholas returned to find Sarah gently bathing Sophia's face. "She's beautiful," Sarah remarked softly, "even like this." Nicholas nodded, feeling a strange protectiveness toward this woman he'd never even spoken to. "I keep wondering what kind of man marries a woman only to poison her hours later." "A coward," Sarah replied sharply, "and a fool." She looked up at her brother with knowing eyes. "This is more than professional interest for you, isn't it?" Nicholas shifted uncomfortably. "I just want to see justice done." Sarah wasn't convinced but didn't press the issue. "Well, justice will have to wait until she wakes. For now, go get some rest. You look dead on your feet." Despite his exhaustion, Nicholas found sleep elusive. His mind kept returning to the wedding, reconstructing the events based on what the sheriff and guests had told him. Why poison Sophia? If Walter wanted to be with Rebecca, why go through with the wedding at all? Money, most likely. The schoolteacher might have had a modest inheritance or savings that Walter coveted. Or perhaps there was some deeper motive yet to be discovered. Whatever the reason, Nicholas found himself increasingly determined to uncover the truth, not just for justice's sake, but for the unconscious woman fighting for her life down the hall. The next 3 days fell into a rhythm. Nicholas and Sarah took turns sitting with Sophia, administering the medicines Dr. Ferguson left and monitoring her condition. When not at Sophia's bedside, Nicholas helped with ranch chores or rode into town for updates from the sheriff. The search for Walter and Rebecca had so far yielded nothing. They had apparently headed west, possibly toward the New Mexico territory, but the trail was growing cold. On the 4th morning, Nicholas was dozing in the chair beside Sophia's bed when a soft sound woke him. Opening his eyes, he found himself staring into confused brown eyes. "Where am I?" Sophia whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. Nicholas sat forward, relief washing over him. "You're safe. You're at the Irving Ranch outside of Bandera." She frowned, clearly struggling to make sense of his words. "The wedding. Something went wrong." "You were poisoned," he said gently. "Do you remember anything?" Tears filled her eyes as fragments of memory returned. "The champagne. It tasted strange, and then pain, terrible pain." Her gaze sharpened. "Walter, where is my husband?" Nicholas hesitated, unsure how much to tell her in her weakened state. She read the answer in his silence. "He did this to me, didn't he?" "We believe so," Nicholas admitted. "He and Rebecca Wilkins fled the night of the wedding." Sophia closed her eyes, a single tear tracking down her pale cheek. "Rebecca, I should have known. She was my friend, or so I thought." Nicholas offered her water, which she sipped gratefully. "The sheriff is searching for them both." "And who are you?" she asked, studying him with newfound awareness. "Why am I in your home?" "My name is Nicholas Irving. I was at your wedding on business. I broker cattle sales. When you collapsed, I recognized the poison from my time living near Comanche territory. I helped the doctor stabilize you." She processed this information slowly. You saved my life. Dr. Ferguson did most of the work, he deflected. My sister Sarah and I have just been helping with your recovery. Sophia attempted to sit up but fell back weakly. I've imposed on your kindness for too long. I should return to town. You're not imposing and you're still far too weak to go anywhere, Nicholas interrupted firmly. Besides, where would you go? The school term is over for summer. Reality seemed to crash down on her, then the betrayal, her near death, the uncertainty of her future. Her face crumpled. I have nothing, she whispered. No husband, no home, no family. Without thinking, Nicholas reached out to take her hand. You have time to figure things out. For now, just focus on getting well. When Sarah entered a few minutes later and found Sophia awake, she immediately sent Nicholas for the doctor while she tended to their patient. By the time Dr. Ferguson arrived, Sophia had managed to eat a little broth and learn more about her rescuers. The doctor was delighted with her progress. A remarkable recovery, Mrs. Blackwell. You have a strong constitution. Please, she said quietly, call me Miss Ventura. I don't think I'm entitled to the Blackwell name anymore. Of course, he agreed sympathetically. Rest is still essential, but I believe the worst is behind us. Another week of recuperation, and you should be strong enough to decide on your next steps. After the doctor left, Nicholas found Sophia sitting up against her pillows, a distant look in her eyes. Penny for your thoughts, he asked, settling into the chair beside her. She gave him a sad smile. I was just wondering how I could have been so blind. Walter courted me for nearly 6 months. I thought he loved me. People can be skilled at deception when there's something they want, Nicholas said. What drew you to him? Sophia considered the question. He was charming, attentive, the most eligible bachelor in Bandera, everyone said, and I was. Lonely, I suppose. Teaching is rewarding but isolating. And Rebecca, she was your friend, my first friend when I arrived in town. She introduced me to Walter. Sophia's expression hardened. Now I understand why she was so eager for me to meet him. She wanted to keep him close while making me believe their relationship was over. Nicholas leaned forward. Do you have any idea why they would want to harm you? Was there money involved in your marriage? Sophia shook her head. I have no fortune, if that's what you're asking. I owned nothing but my teaching salary and a small inheritance from my parents, $500, and my mother's jewelry. Did Walter know about the inheritance? Yes, but surely that's not enough motive for murder. The Blackwells are the wealthiest family in the county. Nicholas wasn't convinced. Sometimes it's not about how much, but about having control. Did you sign any papers before the wedding? A will, perhaps? Sophia's eyes widened with sudden realization. Yes, Walter insisted I make a will, leaving everything to him just in case. He said all proper couples did so. She pressed a hand to her mouth. I never thought. That might explain it, Nicholas said grimly. $500 isn't much to the Blackwells, but it's a decent stake for a couple looking to start fresh elsewhere. And my mother's jewelry, Sophia added quietly. Some pieces were quite valuable. Her wedding ring had a significant diamond. Nicholas felt a surge of anger at the coldness of the plot against her. We should tell Sheriff Miller. It strengthens the case against them. Sophia nodded, then abruptly changed the subject. Tell me about yourself, Mr. Irving. You've saved my life and opened your home to me, yet I know almost nothing about you. Nicholas seemed uncomfortable with the shift in focus but obliged her. Not much to tell. My family moved to Texas when I was 12, started this ranch with 20 head of cattle and a dream. My father died 5 years ago and my mother followed last year. Now it's just Sarah and me. And the cattle brokering, a way to supplement our income. We're not a large operation compared to the Blackwells or other ranches around here. I travel around making deals, connecting buyers and sellers. You seem young for such responsibility, Sophia observed. Nicholas smiled slightly. 28 isn't so young out here. How old are you, if I may ask? 23, she replied, though I feel much older today. Their conversation was interrupted by Sarah calling them to dinner. With Nicholas's help, Sophia managed to walk slowly to the dining room, her first time out of bed since the poisoning. Over the simple but hearty meal, Sophia learned more about the Irving siblings. Sarah was 25, unmarried by choice despite several suitors, and fiercely dedicated to preserving the ranch their parents had built. Nicholas, though equally committed to the ranch, had a restlessness about him, a desire to see more of the world that his cattle brokering partially satisfied. As the days passed, Sophia grew stronger. She began taking short walks around the ranch, supported at first by either Nicholas or Sarah, then gradually on her own. The fresh air and peaceful surroundings seemed to heal not just her body but her spirit as well. A week after she first awoke, Sheriff Miller rode out to the ranch with news. "We found them," he announced without preamble when Nicholas met him on the porch. "Walter and Rebecca?" Nicholas asked, as Sophia appeared in the doorway behind him. The sheriff nodded, removing his hat respectfully when he saw Sophia. "Madam, good to see you on your feet. Where are they?" she asked, her voice steady despite the pallor that had returned to her face. "Apprehended in El Paso, trying to book passage to California. They had your jewelry with them, Miss Ventura, along with documents showing access to your bank account." "And they confessed?" Nicholas pressed. The sheriff's expression turned grim. "Rebecca did, after we separated them. Seems it was Walter's idea, poison you at the wedding, make it look like a tragic accident, collect your inheritance and disappear. Rebecca was promised a new life with him once you were out of the picture." Sophia sank into a porch chair. "I trusted them both." "They'll face justice," Sheriff Miller assured her. "Attempted murder carries a heavy sentence even out here." After the sheriff departed, promising to keep them updated on the legal proceedings, Nicholas found Sophia still sitting on the porch, staring out at the horizon. "Are you all right?" he asked, taking the chair beside her. "I'm not sure what I am," she admitted. "Relieved they've been caught. Angry at their betrayal. Sad for the future I thought I had." She turned to look at him. "Grateful to you and Sarah for saving me in every possible way." "You'd have done the same," he said simply. She smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "You don't know that. You don't really know me at all." "I know enough," he replied. "I know you're strong. Few people would have survived that poison. I know your kind. I've seen how you talk to Sarah and our ranch hands. And I know you're resilient. You're already planning your next steps instead of wallowing in what happened." Sophia looked surprised at his assessment. "You've been watching me." Nicholas felt heat rise to his face. "I notice things. Occupational hazard of traveling alone so much." "What else have you noticed?" she asked, a hint of playfulness in her voice that hadn't been there before. He hesitated, then decided on honesty. "That you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, even when you were fighting for your life." Her eyes widened at his boldness, but she didn't look away. "I've noticed things too, like how you check on me every night before you go to bed, thinking I'm asleep, or how you always make sure my water glass is full and there are fresh flowers by my bedside." It was Nicholas's turn to be surprised. "Sarah's doing the flowers." "No," Sophia corrected gently. "Sarah told me it was you, said you ride out early to find wildflowers before I wake up." Caught, Nicholas could only shrug. "Seemed like a small thing that might brighten your day." Sophia reached out and placed her hand over his. "It did. Everything you've done has brightened days that could have been very dark indeed." Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since he first sat vigil by her sick. but Sophia withdrew her hand after a moment. "I should return to town soon. I've imposed on your hospitality long enough." "You're not imposing," Nicholas insisted. "Sarah loves having another woman around, and he stopped, unsure how to express what her presence meant to him without overstepping. "And you," Sophia prompted softly. "I would miss you," he admitted, "but I understand if you need to return to your life." Sophia laughed, the sound unexpectedly bitter. "What life? My position at the school doesn't resume until September. My reputation in town is likely in tatters, the abandoned bride, poisoned at her own wedding, and I have no family, no home of my own." "Stay then," Nicholas said impulsively. "At least until you're fully recovered and have made proper plans." Seeing her hesitation, he added, "Sarah would insist if she were here instead of visiting her friend in town." After a moment's consideration, Sophia nodded. "A few more days, perhaps, if you're certain it's no trouble." "No trouble at all," Nicholas assured her, trying to hide his relief. Those few days stretched into a week and then two. Sophia regained her strength, helping Sarah with household tasks and even teaching Nicholas's youngest ranch hand, 14-year-old Tommy, to read in the evenings. Her natural warmth and intelligence endeared her to everyone at the Irving ranch. Nicholas found himself inventing reasons to delay his next cattle brokering trip, unwilling to leave while Sophia remained. They fell into an easy companionship, taking evening walks around the property, discussing books they'd both read, or simply sitting in comfortable silence watching the sunset. One evening, as they returned from such a walk, Sheriff Miller was waiting at the ranch house with unexpected news. "Thought you should hear this directly from me," he said, declining Sarah's offer of coffee. "Walter Blackwell's father has offered to pay you a settlement, Miss Ventura, a considerable sum, in exchange for not pressing charges against his son." Sophia stiffened. "He thinks he can buy my silence after Walter tried to murder me." "Not exactly," the sheriff clarified. "Walter and Rebecca will still face charges from the territory, but Jeremiah Blackwell is hoping to avoid a full trial that would further damage the family name. He's offering $5,000. Nicholas whistled softly. It was an enormous sum, enough to buy a small ranch outright or set someone up comfortably in business. "What would happen to Walter without a trial?" Sophia asked. "He'd still serve time, but likely less, and with fewer details becoming public record." Sophia was quiet for a long moment. "I need to think about this." After the sheriff departed, Nicholas found Sophia on the porch swing, her expression troubled. $5,000 would change your life," he said, sitting beside her. "No one would blame you for accepting, wouldn't they?" she asked. "It feels like letting him win somehow. He's still going to jail either way, but his family gets to preserve their precious reputation." Sophia sighed. "The money would mean independence for me. I could open my own school, perhaps, or buy a small house." "Then take it," Nicholas encouraged her, ignoring the selfish part of him that feared what her independence might mean for their growing connection. "Use his father's money to build the life Walter tried to take from you." She studied his face in the fading light. "What would you do if you were me?" Nicholas considered the question seriously. "I'd take the money, but I'd also make sure the basic facts became known anyway, not through a trial, but through living well and telling my story when asked. The truth has a way of spreading with or without official channels." Sophia smiled. "That's very wise, Mr. Irving. Nicholas, please. After all this time, I think formality is a bit ridiculous." "Nicholas," she repeated, the name sounding different in her voice. "And you should call me Sophia." The next morning, Sophia sent word to Sheriff Miller accepting the settlement, with one additional condition, that her mother's jewelry be returned in full. By afternoon, a lawyer from the Blackwell Ranch arrived with papers to sign, and a bank draft for the agreed amount. "What will you do now?" Nicholas asked that evening as they sat on the porch, the weight of decision lifted from her shoulders. Sophia looked out at the ranch, peaceful in the gathering twilight. "I'm not sure. Return to teaching eventually, I suppose. Find a place to live in the meantime." Nicholas gathered his courage. "You could stay here." She turned to him, surprised. "As your guest." "Nicholas, that's generous, but I couldn't impose indefinitely." "Not as a guest," he clarified, his heart pounding. "As something else, if you wanted." Sophia went very still. "What are you saying?" Nicholas took her hand, his usual confidence faltering in the face of what he was about to propose. "I know it's sudden. We've known each other only a short time, but these weeks with you have shown me what was missing from my life before. You're brave and kind and stronger than anyone I've ever met. Nicholas, I'm not asking for promises," he hurried on. "Just a chance. Stay, not as our guest, but as someone considering a future here. Use some of your settlement to invest in the ranch if you like, so you don't feel dependent. Teach Tommy and the other children nearby. Get to know me as more than the man who helped nurse you back to health." Sophia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "You're suggesting a courtship." "I'm suggesting we see where this connection between us leads," Nicholas amended. "No pressure, no expectations, just possibility." She was quiet for so long that Nicholas began to fear he'd overstepped, but then she squeezed his hand. "I thought I knew what love was with Walter," she said softly. "I was so wrong. What I felt for him was nothing compared to what I've begun to feel for you." Hope surged through Nicholas. "Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe," she corrected with a small smile. "A maybe that leans strongly toward yes, but still a maybe. I need to be certain this time." Nicholas brought her hand to his lips. "I can work with maybe." The following month saw Sophia bloom like the wildflowers Nicholas still brought her every morning. She used part of her settlement to purchase a half-interest in the Irving ranch, insisting on being a true partner rather than a charity case. The rest she invested in expanding the property and improving the small schoolhouse in the nearby community, where she began teaching again. Nicholas postponed his cattle brokering trips at first, unwilling to leave while their relationship was still new and fragile. But as autumn approached, a significant opportunity arose that required his presence in Kansas City. "You should go," Sophia insisted when he hesitated to tell her. "This contract could secure the ranch's finances for years." "I'll be gone at least 3 weeks," he protested. "Maybe more." She cupped his face in her hands. "And I'll be here when you return. This is your work, Nicholas. I would never ask you to abandon it." The night before his departure, they sat under the stars, planning improvements to the ranch and discussing which books Sophia would read to his ranch hands while he was away. "I have something for you," Nicholas said, reaching into his pocket. "A parting gift." "That's unnecessary," Sophia began, but fell silent when he pressed a small object into her palm. It was a simple silver ring set with a small but perfect sapphire. "It was my mother's," Nicholas explained. "Sarah has her wedding band, but this was her everyday ring. I want you to have it." Sophia stared at the ring, then at him. "Nicholas, this is too much." "It's not a proposal," he clarified. "Not yet. That will come when I return if you're ready. Consider this a promise that what we're building is real." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks as she slipped the ring onto her finger. "It's beautiful." "Like you," he said simply, drawing her into his arms. When Nicholas departed the next morning, Sophia stood on the porch waving until his figure disappeared down the road. Sarah came to stand beside her, noticing the ring glinting in the morning light. "Finally gave it to you, did he?" she remarked with a smile. "He's been carrying that in his pocket for weeks." Sophia touched the ring wonderingly. "I never expected to find this after everything that happened." Sometimes the worst days lead us exactly where we need to be, Sarah said wisely. Now come help me with breakfast. We have a ranch to run while that brother of mine is off making us rich. Nicholas's absence stretched to nearly a month as negotiations in Kansas City proved more complex than anticipated. But the outcome exceeded even his highest hopes. Contracts for the Irving Ranch to supply cattle to 3 major buyers over the next 5 years, at prices that would ensure prosperity. His return journey was hastened by thoughts of Sophia. Their letters during his absence had grown increasingly affectionate, with Sophia's last one hinting that her maybe had transformed into something much more definite. As he approached the ranch in the golden light of late afternoon, Nicholas was surprised to see a new fence line extending their property to the east, and fresh paint on the barn. Sophia had clearly been putting her settlement money to good use. He was even more surprised to find the house unusually quiet. Normally, ranch hands would be returning from the day's work, and Sarah would be preparing dinner. Instead, a note on the kitchen table informed him that Sarah was staying in town overnight with friends, and the hands had been given the evening off. Puzzled, Nicholas called out for Sophia, but received no answer. He was about to check the barn when he noticed light coming from the small grove of trees behind the house, a place he'd often found Sophia reading in the afternoons. Making his way there, Nicholas stopped short at the sight that greeted him. Lanterns hung from the branches, illuminating a small table set for 2. Sophia stood beside it, wearing a new blue dress that matched her eyes and the sapphire on her finger. "Welcome home," she said, her face radiant. Nicholas crossed to her in 3 strides, gathering her in his arms. "What's all this?" "A celebration," she replied. "For your successful trip, for our partnership, for everything." Over a dinner she had prepared herself, Sophia told him about the improvements to the ranch and her growing confidence in her place there. Her teaching was going well, and she'd used part of her settlement to establish a small library for the community. "You've been busy," Nicholas observed, admiring her enthusiasm. "And all this while running the ranch with Sarah." "It helped me not miss you quite so desperately," Sophia admitted. "Though I still did." After dinner, as they walked back toward the house hand in hand, Nicholas stopped beneath a large oak tree. "I have something else for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "Something I've been carrying since Kansas City." This time, when he opened his palm, it held a gold band with a modest but brilliant diamond. Unlike the ostentatious ring Walter had given her, this one was elegant in its simplicity. "I know we agreed to wait," Nicholas said, suddenly nervous. "But being away from you these weeks made one thing absolutely clear. I don't want to spend another day wondering if you'll be my wife. I love you, Sophia Ventura." Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but her smile was radiant. "Ask me properly, Nicholas Irving." Grinning, he dropped to one knee before her. "Sophia Ventura, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," she whispered, pulling him to his feet. "Yes, with all my heart." Their kiss beneath the oak tree sealed a promise born in the most unlikely of circumstances, a poisoned bride, and the cowboy who refused to let her die. They were married 2 months later in a simple ceremony on the ranch, with Sarah as maid of honor and the ranch hands and local families as guests. Sophia wore a gown of ivory lace, far less elaborate than her first wedding dress but infinitely more meaningful. As they spoke their vows, Nicholas slipped his mother's wedding band onto Sophia's finger to rest beside her engagement ring. The sapphire ring moved to her right hand, a constant reminder of the promise that had begun their journey toward marriage. The trial of Walter Blackwell and Rebecca Wilkins concluded a week after the wedding. Both received sentences of 15 years for attempted murder. The scandal damaged the Blackwell family's standing in the community, but Jeremiah Blackwell's attempt to buy a quieter resolution had partially succeeded. Few details of the plot emerged in the newspapers. Sophia and Nicholas, true to their word, made no effort to hide the truth when asked. Their story of poisoning and recovery, of justice and redemption, of finding love where it was least expected, became something of a legend in Bandera County. Over the next year, Nicholas continued his cattle brokering, though he limited his trips to no more than a week away from home. Sophia divided her time between teaching and helping Sarah manage the ranch, which prospered under their joint care. In the spring of 1880, almost 2 years after the fateful wedding that nearly claimed her life, Sophia gave birth to a son they named James, after Nicholas's father. As she held their child in the same bedroom where she had once fought to survive, Sophia felt the journey come full circle. "He has your eyes," Nicholas said, sitting beside them on the bed. "And your stubborn chin," Sophia teased, tracing their son's tiny features. Sarah appeared in the doorway, beaming at her new nephew. "He's perfect, and strong just like his parents." As twilight fell, Nicholas stood by the window of their bedroom, watching Sophia nurse their son. The ranch spread out before him, greener and more prosperous than ever before. The house had been expanded to accommodate their growing family, with a proper library for Sophia and a nursery for James. "What are you thinking about so seriously?" Sophia asked, noticing his contemplative expression. Nicholas turned back to his family, overcome with gratitude for the life they'd built together. "I was thinking about poison," he admitted, "and how something meant to destroy can sometimes lead to something beautiful instead." Sophia's expression softened with understanding. "From poison to promise. From tragedy to triumph," Nicholas added, sitting beside her and gently touching their son's downy head. The boy would grow up hearing the story of how his parents met a tale of betrayal transformed into boundless love, of a bride poisoned at her own wedding, and the cowboy who nursed her back to health while hunting for justice. It was a story that reminded them all that even in the wildest corners of Texas, in the most desperate circumstances, love could take root and flourish. As stars appeared in the velvet sky outside their window, Nicholas kissed his wife's forehead. "I love you, Sophia Irving." "And I love you," she whispered back. "My rescuer, my partner, my heart." In the years that followed, the Irving Ranch became known throughout Bandera County, not just for its fine cattle, but for the extraordinary couple at its heart, a school teacher who had survived the unthinkable and the cowboy who had helped her discover that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most beautiful lives. Together they raised their son, eventually welcoming a daughter they named Hope, a testament to what had carried them through their darkest days. And on quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the ranch was peaceful under moonlight, Nicholas would still bring Sophia wildflowers, a reminder of the simple act of care that had first opened her heart to the possibility of loving again.